welcome to the Wandering Tangent Podcast. I'm BJ. With me is Jeff. Once again, we are joined by a mutual friend, aka Gary.
Hello.
And today we are talking about the 1987 sci-fi movie, Batteries Not Included.
Okay, BJ, you have never seen this movie before, right? This was brand new to you?
This was my first time viewing, yes.
Okay, and Gary, had you seen this before?
I have this was a staple of my young life because this showed up on TV a few times when I was a kid. There's a young staple of when I was a kid, because it was a TV would show up on a Saturday afternoon and we'd go watch that to, watch the movie or whatever's on TV.
Yeah, whatever was on, you watched it. I totally get that.
Back in the good old days when
TV
was just kind of a dice roll.
That sticks with you. So I remembered a lot before I came into this.
I'm really interested to hear what BJ has to say. So BJ, you go first. What do you think of it?
I think you might be kind of disappointed it was all right, I guess. I mean,
okay.
I was going to say it's heartwarming, but Gary mentioned some stuff before we started recording, and I guess he has a different take, but as someone
Would you say heartwarming, though? You would say, right?
Yeah, I guess. I guess it's what you would suspect from something Spielberg is involved with in the 80s. It's pretty whimsical. It's cute, I guess, but as someone who has no nostalgia tied to it, it's okay. It's not the best thing ever. I don't know if I would go out of my way to watch it again, but, it's not like The Burbs or Star Trek Motion Picture where I wanted to tear my hair out while I was watching it.
Like the other movies I made you watch, yeah.
So yes, this is not another entry into the hall of movies Jeff likes that BJ doesn't. I'm just kind of positively neutral, I guess. It's not bad, but again, as someone with no nostalgia attached to it, it was all right.
Okay, so you would recommend it or not recommend it?
I wouldn't not recommend it. I mean, if someone said, "Oh, I want to watch Batteries Not Included," I wouldn't be like, "No, don't do it. You'll regret it for the rest of your life."
Stop! You can't.
No. No, it's.
Right.
I mean, I don't know if I would go somewhere and be like, "Hey, let's watch Batteries Not Included," but it's all right. It is solidly okay.
All right, Gary, go ahead.
Okay.
Speak away.
I find maybe it's the state of my life right now, but there's some things that happen in this movie that is kind of let's just say it brings up some rough. So this movie was a bit.
You got to speak to that.
There was some rough parts to this movie, most especially by the performance by Jessica Tandy as the. She's playing Faye Riley, the older woman who's suffering from dementia, and she does a really good performance of it, and it's kind of rough. Admittedly, no one. How do I put this? Now, I'm not going to go into spoilers. We'll save that for the spoiler section. But she does a really good performance, and it kind of touched on some points with me where I was like, oh gosh, I don't know if I really want to drag that particular part back out and be thinking about it during a movie that's supposed to be, because it's science fiction, right? And BJ's talking about it being whimsical, and but then again, I'm thinking about at the time she's doing this performance of a woman who's suffering from dementia, and I know how much that can cause people to suffer, because not just the people who are suffering from it, but everybody else around them. On the other hand, they do a really good job with it. When we get into spoiler section, I'll talk more about it. But let's just say there was parts of it that were kind of rough for me to watch.
Yeah.
Would you recommend it?
I'm going to be on the side of BJ, where I'm not going to say don't watch this movie, because I feel like what was done, it's Spielberg. He did a good job. This is
So
Spielberg
I'm hearing
thing.
like give it a try.
Give it a
sort
try.
of a recommendation. Give it a try.
Give it a try.
Go ahead.
Don't go looking for it, but give it a try.
Yeah. So, with what Gary is saying, there are certain situations in this movie that, given people's own personal experiences, I could see not being fun to watch.
Yeah.
Oh.
But
well, yeah, I didn't get that at all. But okay.
No, there's
yeah, I get it. If you have situations like that, you might see something in it. Yeah, but
we'll get into it. But there's layers to this movie that are way deeper than the surface. If you're just like a little kid watching, all you're gonna see is cute little alien spaceships and a fun, happy, whimsical scene. But if you're an adult watching with more life experience, you're going to be like, oh gosh, what's happening? Oh gosh. Because you're going to understand a lot more of what's happening in the situation, and it might make you feel feelings. And if you're not ready to feel feelings in this movie, you're going to...
Warning, movie might make people feel feelings.
Yes, okay.
There's a serious danger of feelings. Yeah.
Here you go, Jeff. You finally got another movie we can slap another disclaimer on.
Feelings. Disclaimer, feelings. Lots of feelings.
But anyway, so Jeff, you're the one that chose this movie for us to watch. So I assume that means you like it. Either that or this is one of your weird movies don't have to be enjoyable to be good thing you went on a while ago. This is self-hate watch. What's going on?
Like normal, BJ, your powers of assumption are flawless. Yes, exactly. I do like this movie. In fact, I like it quite a bit. But it does actually fit into exactly the stereotype you just placed on me perfectly. Yeah, it is kind of slowly paced, and a lot of people just probably will think, wow, this movie seems longer than it is. But the guts of this movie are really good. And yes, they will warm your heart. Even cold hearts could probably be a little bit warmed by it. And all of the characters, I think, are good. They're good characters. So there's a few things about the movie that we can go into spoilers and talk about, but those things that I think were a little silly, I think overall when you see the movie, this movie is good. It is a well-written, well-designed, well-thought-out film. There's a lot of talented people who are a part of it. And it, sometimes with movies, even when you have talented people and they come together, sometimes things just fall apart. But this is one of those films where I think things came together and it worked out really well. Yeah. So I recommend it. I give it a whole recommend it. I don't think it's a movie that anyone should miss. They should at some point give it a try. And yeah, definitely watch it.
I want to correct something. Sorry. I said Spielberg. It's actually Matthew Robbins that was the director of this one.
Yeah, Spielberg was involved.
Oh. Spielberg was the producer, so...
Yeah, producer.
Oh, okay.
So, fun fact about this movie. It was originally designed to be an episode of the TV series Amazing Stories. But Spielberg liked the concept so much that he had it drawn out into a whole movie. Maybe drawn out is not the best turn of phrase, but when I saw that piece of information after I watched that movie, I'm like, oh, that makes a lot of sense. That was originally designed to be maybe half as long as it actually was.
Yeah, it did feel like there were... Because we'll get into the spoiler section, and I'll have some things to say about some of the things that happens in this movie. But Yeah, I see how it could have been done a lot shorter. The same exact story, but done quite a bit shorter, and you would have told pretty much the same story. But
Okay. Well, let's get into spoilers, unless you guys have more to philosophize about.
there's philosophies, but they'll get into the spoilers section.
Yeah,
Because I can't.
it's hard to keep going without spoiling something.
I find this amusing because I can sense Jeff starting to feel a bit defensive about this movie.
I'm not gonna attack it.
No. I want you guys to say everything that you want to say. I do.
I mean,
absolutely.
I don't know that I'm going to quote unquote attack this movie, but there are some things that happen in this movie that I'm going to be like, okay, feelings happen.
I don't have any kind of emotional investment in the movie. Yeah.
Okay.
I don't have any emotional investment in this movie, says the guy who says that no one should miss this movie.
At least as far as like, okay, what am I trying to say? Yeah, go ahead. This is what I'm trying to say.
Bring it on. I can change it.
Yeah, bring it on.
Okay.
Go ahead.
But
okay, so go ahead.
It's interesting. So the movie has nice, very clear cut.
Okay, so spoilers are in now.
Spoilers
are going to totally spoil.
Sure.
Yeah, go ahead, Gary.
So the movie has a very clear cut opening act, right? Pretty much, you by the time the end of this opening act is done, there could be a little. They basically show a neon sign saying "Act 1 completed. Go to press pause now. Get popcorn. Do whatever." Right?
Let's all go to the lobby.
Yeah. But no, there's like a very clear cut opening act, and that opening act establishes all of the characters that we're going to see in the movie. Right? The tenants of a building and the situations that they are going through, and then there's like a few other characters. Most importantly, there's a guy named Carlos. He's kind of like this thug slash fixer.
Carlos might be my favorite character in this movie. Is Carlos?
He definitely has a lot of layer to him, but he's kind of a fixer or a thug with aspirations to be something bigger, and he's being hired.
He becomes the villain in the beginning of this movie. He's the villain.
Oh, he pretty much is
very interesting character arc through.
He is pretty much the villain through the whole movie, but the fact that he shows some deep compassion even towards the beginning of it. You can tell that he's not just doing this to be villainous mwahaha. He's doing this.
He has a goal.
He has a goal. He has a reasons. And the fact that that he's given the allowance to show that he's doing this. He's not just this one-dimensional character. He's not a caricature or character.
But the funny thing that I like about it is that he is first introduced as a one-dimensional character. We first see him as this punk who's being mean to people, and then later on you start to learn a little bit more about the complexity.
Even in the mean,
especially when you. Yeah.
Even in the meanness, he's been showing, because he's trying to get these people out of this building so that it can be developed, right? It can be torn down and developed into a high rise that that this land developer who's in the area can he wants to develop this building into like some sort of skyscraper complex that he can sell for billions, right? And it's just like 4 rooms worth of tenants, right?
And what I like about these tenants is they are not all the same. These are very, very different people. And they don't know each other very well. They all kind of have come and gone in this building, and there's never been an experience where they got together and really got to know each other.
No, and
you get that sense.
You would think that even. So there's 4. Let's talk about the 4 groups of tenants, even though it's basically 5 people, right?
So I'm gonna interrupt here for a second and
Yep.
backtrack the conversation before we move on.
Yes.
So I think I'm gonna disagree with y'all, and I'm gonna say that the quote unquote redemption of Carlos, it didn't feel like it was earned to me. He just kind of all of a sudden went from, yeah, I'm smashing up these guys' building to get move out to, oh wait, I don't want her
Well,
to
Oh,
die.
I don't
I guess
agree
I'm
that
a good
he's
guy now.
I don't agree that he redeems himself at all. That's a Jeff thing. I would think
well, here's the
he
thing.
tries
Like,
to,
I
and he shows a human elements to him, that he's not just a caricature, but he's at no point does he redeem himself. There's no
well, I sort of little bit disagree with that. I think he ran into a burning building. I mean, he risked his life. But here's another thing to think about. I don't think Carlos hugely changed. I think the Carlos you see at the beginning of the movie is that he is a brutal guy who will terrorize people, but at the same time, he's not somebody who actually wants anyone killed. He will push boundaries, and he's a thug,
but
but
he-
he does have a kernel about him where he knows he doesn't want these people to actually get hurt.
and
And
and even as he's showing his strength in the beginning of the movie, he's offering the carrot along with the stick. Quite literally, he's offering them money to get out, and then he's also showing them a baseball bat. Him and his friends are going to be
I
rough
know,
and ready if they don't take the money and leave. Because
which is a weird thing to put in a movie, because there's no way a business could hire a group of thugs to go through a neighborhood and, like, I don't know, maybe like 100 years ago
oh
or
Jeff,
something.
oh
But
sweet,
in 1980,
Oh,
I don't
oh,
know.
right.
I don't
you
think
sweet
so.
sweet summer
Summer
child,
child,
Jeff.
yeah.
You really
sweet
think that I'm
summer
naive
child.
and thinking that would just not happen, right? I don't think that would happen in the 1980s.
Oh, sweet
No,
summer
I don't
child
think you could.
that
Yes.
you are, that
Yes,
believes
Jeff,
in the goodness of humanity, that would
They totally made that up just for this movie.
that
Yeah.
Well,
never
no, I'm
happened,
saying
Jeff.
It had never happened before.
They smash the diner, and the guy goes to the police, and he's like, "Come on, you're gonna do something." And I get it's a broken down neighborhood. The police are having a hard time following up on every single call they get. It's just they're overwhelmed.
And
But at the same time, the thing is if
But-
people, like a reporter came around and could prove that a gang of thugs was hired by this expensive
no, Jeff,
business,
right there.
that's
Prove.
where they could make a link and say, "Hey,
So-
look,"
This
and make a
isn't-
huge
this
story
isn't-
out
so-
of it.
our modern day, where there's as the police officer said, there's no neighborhood. There's
Well,
five
that-
people holding on in a building inside of. There's like no one lives within like blocks of this area because it's all being torn down. There's just these five people left in this building. It's not even
And also-
a bit more than that because there's another old couple, but they're moving out right at the beginning of the movie. So it's just these five.
Well,
people
and
left.
so one of the things, that plot device of the thugs attacking the building, it's not hugely believable to me. But at the same time, it really helps to build up the problem that these people have, and it helps set up the story perfectly.
Oh,
It does extremely well.
I find it perfectly believable, but that we'll agree to
you really
disagree.
think that
It's-
if you were living in an apartment building that was needing to be torn down, that people wanted to tear it down, that there would be like a gang of young guys that would go around trying to hang out cash, not a check, like traceable money, but like cash. It says you could just take the envelope and then just still not move out. There's no like agreement, like you know, cancel your lease and we'll give you a certain amount of money, just sign here or something. I don't know. That part of the storyline is not as believable to me, and it's fine. Like, I don't care because the movie is so good, and the movie needs this group of thugs. They need that opposition at the beginning to set up the
So,
story.
It shows.
I like how the thing that throws Jeff off is not the fact that the thugs are offering money. It's that no one takes the money and stays. I don't know what that says about Jeff.
Well, it
Like,
shows
takes
what
to
it
the
does
biggest
say is
stage.
about the character of the people who are in the building. They want to be there because they feel like it's the last thing that they have, and they don't want to be pushed any farther. That is kind of a sentiment that's shared amongst people at a certain point in their life. Let's call it rock bottom, right? And
Yeah.
that's where a lot of
And
these people are. And so let's get back to these people.
yeah, they all have one unique thing, and that they're all in a bad situation.
Rock
They're all
bottom.
struggling. Yeah, the Rileys, who are a real married couple. That's one of the cool things about the Rileys, is that they're a real couple, and even the photographs you see at the
Well,
beginning of the
Jeff is
movie.
saying that the actors who plays the Rileys are actually married.
Okay, yes, thanks for clarifying. Yeah, they are married in real life, and those photos that they show at the beginning are in fact their family photos.
And so there's the Rileys, and
Yes.
the old lady is suffering. The Miss Riley, just she's
Yes.
Faye. She is suffering from dementia, and her husband is he owns a restaurant on the first floor, right? So there's
See, I
Riley.
kind of think that he owns the building too. I know that it's never really talked about who owns this building or not, but I actually think
I think
that he
it's
is
not
the
so much
owner.
that these are these are apartments, but these aren't apartments that you rent. These are apartments that you buy, which is a lot more. Which would
It's more of a condo than an apartment.
yeah, more condo than an apartment, but still these are locations where people are living, but they pretty much own these locations and they're like the last 5 ones to own these locations, and they've kept up on their bills, they've kept up on everything, but they don't have enough resources to move out, or if they do, they just don't want to. Because
They just don't
very
want to,
various
yeah.
sort
Because
of
the
reasons,
Rileys,
right? And
you
establish
get the
so
sense.
we've got the Rileys, we've got Mr. Harry Noble, who's a boxer who's now retired, and he's very famous back in his day, and now he's just kind of it very much seems like he probably got hit one too many times, and he's now kind of suffering from that.
He's also probably has some sort of emotional issues from his fighting years, because all of that fighting and aggression, I think, has somehow changed him. And you kind of just have to guess, because they don't come out and say it.
Well, no, they don't come out and say it, but this is a real thing that people suffer from who get hit a lot of times. I think they call it traumatic brain injury or something along those lines, where they talk about it a lot in sports and also within the military. Someone who gets hit either in the head or in the body or along those lines. People who get injured again and again and again, or even just has to be once or a lot of small times or whatever, they start to their brain chemistry starts to change a bit, and they stop being able to handle things in a normal fashion. So
yeah,
that's kind of where he is at. And so that's why you see him like really, like, he doesn't seem to be super suffering financially. I mean, he's not the richest man in the world, but he has enough figured out to where he can keep himself afloat. But then he's like just kind of focused on what he's doing in his immediate area. And I kind of recognize that in a few people I've known throughout my life. And it's yet another kind of rough area for me to see a person suffering through that. And so
yeah, and I get the sense like part of the reason why he stays there is because he's familiar with that place.
Oh, he's definitely familiar. He does not.
Yeah,
he doesn't want to move because moving somewhere else would be unfamiliar and even particularly devastating. Like, he's constantly trying to bring this place back to the way it was, and he's having a difficult time of doing it. It shows that he collects up these little tiles that were from this little mural that was on a floor in the in the entryway. He keeps collecting them and keeps trying to get them stuck back in place, but he's not quite able to do that.
Yeah, and this is one of the many things that becomes a heartwarming setup, where they're setting you up for this heartwarming experience, where they're showing you how he is trying to fix things in this enormous world around him that is so out of his control.
Yeah.
Yet, despite all of that, here he is hammering one little piece of tile back into place.
So,
Despite everything around him. I think it's awesome. I do love it. And it's a great setup, as well as other things. Go ahead.
Then we get into the other two characters. Elizabeth Pena plays Marissa, and then Mason Baylor plays, Dennis. Anyways, so there's Marissa and Mason, right? Mason is an artist, and Marissa is I don't know what her occupation is. I'm going to say waitress, something. I don't know.
She has no occupation.
But she's an expecting mother of a musician who is her boyfriend, who is not in the movie, pretty much in the movie at all. And then there's Mason.
And her situation is that she's going to have a child,
yes.
And her future is very uncertain.
Yes, and so
she's in that situation.
And then there's Mason, who is an artist who is he's youthful and he's energetic, and he's got this he loves this building, and he sees it as the perfect area for him to do his art in.
But he's kind of a lost artist too.
Yeah, he's kind of a lost artist.
He doesn't know exactly where he's going with his art.
Yeah.
And he loses his girlfriend at the very beginning.
Mm-hmm.
And it's, once again, he's just, all these people are trying to find their place.
Yeah, it's not necessarily that they're trying to find their place. It more feels like they're kind of a little bit broken, which, if done well, a group of broken people eventually finding each other and kind of filling in the cracks with each other's help is kind of one of those really good stories that can be told. They don't necessarily become the heroes as individuals, but by eventually finding ways to work together, they as a team become the hero.
Okay, BJ, what do you think of these characters? What do you think? You like all the characters? They're all perfect and flawless, right?
They're characters, all right.
Okay.
They're up on the screen charactering all over the place. Yes, they do the character thing.
There are characters here, there are characters there, there are characters everywhere.
But it's kind of an eclectic group of people. They're the last ones left in this building. And then the end of the first sequence. What was I saying? Anyways, end of the first chapter of this particular story. It shows what's his name? Frank Riley. It shows Frank just at the end of his rope because his friends have left to go to live in an old folks home, and he doesn't want to do the same, even though he and his wife are very old and both barely able to keep up.
They need a lot of help.
They need help.
Yeah. So what I really like about this movie is that it gives us a glimpse into a time that is now going on almost 40 years ago. I think the world has changed a lot in some ways. And what I really like about this movie is that in the 1980s, people were different. Like, you have this big construction site, and people walk through it. Like, today, that would be walled off. There would be, like, all these security entrances that you can't have people wandering through where buildings are being torn down.
Yeah.
You can't do that kind of thing.
What happened to the good old days when you could just wander through an active construction site without a care in the world?
My point is, like, people just thought about danger differently, and even they also like helped each other. The other couple that lives with the next to the Rileys, they're longtime friends, and the moment she starts getting sick, the other friends, the other family, just starts helping. It's just like that. They're neighbors, and it's just automatic.
Well,
The wife is going to take care of the other wife and do all sorts of things, including putting her to bed, making sure she gets her medicine. I mean, that's a remarkable commitment, and she just did it because this is her lifelong friend. They've been friends. Their children were friends together. They had lived next to each other. And so it's just that remarkable automatic behavior of, oh, well, I am now going to take care of you.
but
Um,
I have this faint suspicion that Jeff's trying to plant this idea in our head. So like, so like,
so when I get dementia, I'm like, hey guys,
hey
I'm going to
guys,
talk about Star Wars all day.
BJ started to do the Star Wars podcast, Jeff. We did that 40 years ago. I don't want to talk about absolutes again.
It's a great character. Don't you understand?
Anyways,
Going off again.
Sorry, Gary.
anyways, so these characters are revealed, and we understand. We get a really good idea of what these characters are doing and what the way they are. And
So
then
you admit that it is at least good. You're admitting good things about this movie. I just want to point that out.
I don't.
We never said the movie wasn't good, Jeff.
We never said that. We
Okay.
just say that it's making us feel feelings in ways that we don't necessarily want to feel all the time.
Remember-
So
You're-
yeah,
You remember like 20 minutes ago when I was making fun of you
I know,
for,
you gave
for
it like
being
a
defensive
medium.
about this movie, and you're like, I'm not being defensive. Here we
okay,
are.
okay. So characters introduced, and then we get the two new characters. Let's call them Daddy Robot and Mommy Robot, because that's exactly what they are. They're two little UFOs come out of the sky, and they do a cute little wander through the Riley's apartment, and then the Mommy Robot, she's really tired from flying all the way, and she finds a fresh new food source in the Riley's apartment, which is a wall socket, so she can plug herself in and get some electricity.
Can I want to come in and say yet another thing right now, but so science fiction in the 1950s and 60s and 70s tends to be scary. Like the aliens from outer space have a tendency to be bad guys, villains, or it's a serious plot where they're smarter than humans and they're trying to teach humans, but they're scary, like in the Day the Earth Stood Still or something. But when you get to Spielberg, in not just this movie but other movies, he starts to take a different path where he wants the aliens to actually be very good and also very relatable and to even be unexpected a bit. You compare this movie to like E.T. or even dang it, I'm losing
Close
my...
Encounters of the Third Kind.
Yes, thank you, BJ. See, my dimension net is what BJ is. He just comes in and throws. It's like,
this
it's
is
already
gonna be-
starting. No.
This is going to be my lot in life. I'm just going to follow Jeff around and complete thoughts for him.
Oh, so I get where you're going with this, Jeff. So these
this is kind of like the space aliens are not just crazy things to shoot laser beams at us. This is something different.
Where
and they have a whole different purpose and a different goal, and even something that people can relate to as a human sense of compassion of some kind.
Well, and I get where you're going with this, and I actually agree with you in that these aliens are, yes, they're aliens, but apart from looking like little flying saucers, they're completely human. I was not exaggerating when I called them Daddy Robot and Mommy Robot. That is their motivation. It's almost like a new couple has moved into the apartment building, and after the tenants get over, and that's pretty much the entire second act is the tenants coming to understand the new occupants of the building and coming to understand their motivations and why they're here. But it's almost as if new tenants have moved into the building. They just look different, and after the people understand that, they get used to it and realize, wait a minute, these are people just like us. They just look funny.
Yeah, and they do silly things,
But
they're not serious and stalwart. They're playful, but at the same time, they came for a particular purpose, and it's not clear as to why they chose this building or anything like that. You're left to just wonder in the storyline, just like the characters are just, they can't explain it. They're just here.
I like the explanation that Frank gives. He was basically praying for a miracle, and then a miracle happens, and everybody else who tries to come up with an explanation can't really come up with an explanation. But Frank is fairly certain he understands why. And in all honesty, that's the only one that I can understand. That's the only reason that I could think of, because there's other buildings. They're in the middle of New York. There's all kinds of buildings all over the place. Some of them even less inhabited than this particular building was, and so there's other places for these aliens to get raw, because one of the things that they're looking for is raw scrap materials and then electricity. So a combination of those two things, and New York is full of sites like that. So why they ended up in this particular location is left up to question, other than Frank, who says that he was in a bad place. He and his wife were in a bad place. They needed help. He prayed for help, and help showed up. And so that's his explanation, and I can't think of anything else that fits.
You kind of get a sense that there's a lot of possibilities. One of them is that these creatures just have a sense of intelligence, where out of all the places that perhaps they knew something about this place and these people, and this was the kind of place they wanted to go to. And you're left to just theorize, because there's nothing given to you which to really make a good, strong conclusion, which is great. It is great when movies let you think instead of thinking for you. Sometimes it's better that way.
The less the more they show and the less they tell is a particularly good thing, and we appreciate movie storytellers that do that. When they don't tell us what it is, especially in movies, they explore the medium of showing.
And what I find remarkable, this is probably my biggest thing that I like about the movie, probably close to the biggest thing, but it's that these people are in trouble and they're in hard times, and the creatures show up to help. But what you see is that this group of people in the apartment, as they get to know each other around this problem, they begin working together to help these aliens, these mechanical space saucer creatures of whatever they are. They begin helping them,
giving them
doing everything,
scrap metal, giving them anything that they can spare.
It gives them, they have all these problems, and what do they do? Instead of working on those problems, they just stop to help these creatures.
Well,
and that is what I think, that's their redemption arc.
When they see that
when they fully understand helping them.
When they fully understand that this is an expecting mother, that's one of the things that a community will rally around. Is they'll rally around to help this particular alien, even if it's an alien, they want to, because one of the ladies in the Marissa she's an expecting mother herself, but it'll be a few months before she has her child, but she still understands and sympathizes with this particular alien person thing that's going to be, needs to, anyways. But
So
and the rest of them.
I'm gonna interject here because we, by we I mean you two, against myself, have apparently have come to this conclusion from very different angles. Because while you guys were out there waxing all deep and stuff, I'm just over here trying really hard not to laugh, because the only thing I can think of when we talk about how the mommy robot and the daddy robot, who love each other very much, came to Earth to reproduce, they literally end up in a shack on the building. The mommy robot and the daddy robot shack up.
Okay.
I mean, there's that too.
That's the old.
It's
the only reason why I
have.
find this funny, and sorry, I'm going to run you over here because I've just been over here trying not to laugh about this the whole time. A couple of weeks ago, we all got together, and your wives were there, and they were talking about the movie, and they talked about the daddy robot and the mommy robot in the shack, and I was going to make that same joke, but I'm like, no, that's inappropriate. I'm sure that doesn't actually happen. And then, lo and behold, they actually do shack up.
Yes.
So,
oh my goodness!
I just had to get that out of my system. Y'all carry on with what you were doing.
Okay. Mommy
Shack
robot,
up
daddy
in a
robot.
shack.
That's a good break point, because me and Jeff could go on this forever, and
I was trying so hard not to laugh during that whole thing, because it would have been terribly inappropriate to laugh while you guys were waxing on like that.
Okay. So mommy
Carry
robot,
on.
daddy robot, shack up. Yes, we'll leave with that. It's a blank canvas. It's not a blank canvas, but there's not a lot of details on this canvas. It leaves a lot for us to interpret, right? But these particular things,
I think they make it pretty clear what the robots are doing in the shack.
Oh, no, but
yeah, Gary, it's not an. I don't think he's trying to talk about the shack, but yeah.
But yes, so the mommy robot, daddy robot shack up, and then they have some little baby robots, but one of them, it doesn't quite come out right, and Harry Noble.
The batteries are not included.
Harry Noble, well, so this brings up a kind of a philosophical conundrum with them. What do they do with? Because two of them are bumping and bumbling around like little newborns, right? But the third one doesn't quite come out functional, and this raises the philosophical question of, because Mason says we could, because he wants to study them because he thinks that they are some sort of artificial intelligence machine, right? And he wants to study them because he thinks that this could be like this is the scientific. This could possibly be the scientific discovery of
which really it is. He's not exactly wrong about that.
He's not wrong, but then again, that the others want to treat this as if it is a life, right? And so, on the other hand, so that starts
might be one of the reasons why they came there.
Yeah, that starts to
is because they thought maybe they would treat it like life instead of.
And he wants to get it to a lab so that they could dissect it, and everybody else wants to either
dissect the one that didn't come out alive.
Faye wants to bury it, and then there's a third reaction that happens with Harry Noble. He gets a hold of it and he takes it back to his, because he thinks maybe he can fix it. Because
even though he's been hit in the head a lot, and that he does have some mental problems, he still is quite clever.
And he
still has some mental faculty where he is very good with electronics.
Yeah.
And repairing things, and I think he's like the custodian of the building.
Yeah.
And I get that sense that somehow he has a... Yeah, they mentioned that, I think.
So
he's the...
Yeah. That does bring into question a philosophical question. I'm gonna pose this to you guys, and I know society has even started to understand this particular, because I'm going to bring up a point, but at what point does a thing stop being a manufactured object, and at what point does it start becoming something that has life, right?
Okay,
And I'm going to
since
give
this
an
is a
example
philosophical
here.
question.
I'm going to give an
go
example
ahead.
here because even with our modern technology, or even not so modern technology, there's an invention developed a little bit after this movie. By a little bit, I'm probably saying like a decade, maybe two, after this invention, called the Furby. Who here remembers a Furby? No? Nobody? Nobody remembers a
No.
Furby?
No matter how hard I try to forget, there they are.
So scientists did an experiment with a Furby, right? Because Furbies would actually react to you handling them in various and assorted ways. One of the things that they would do is if you held them upside down, they would start to act in a way that was distressed. Now, this is a pre-programmed function.
Response?
It's something that's pre-programmed, and they would
Yeah,
inform the children.
you're talking about a companion robot
Yeah.
from the 1990s,
Yes.
which could be hard for some people to understand. But yeah, there is such a thing with that limited technology.
And they handed this to little children who, it was a toy that was designed for little children, but scientists recorded this particular interaction, and they recorded little children, and they just told the kids, hey, hold it upside down for a little bit. And then the kids would do that, and the Furby would react, and then the kids, after a very short period of time, would turn it right back up. And the scientists would ask the children, why did you do that? Why did you turn it right side up? And the children would say, because most of the children's responses were something along the lines of, I didn't want to hurt it. Now, they'd been told about the manufacturing process. They'd even been shown the inner workings of this particular device. So they knew it was
they were machines.
Yeah. It wasn't just anything. But their reaction is kind of an understood thing. Like, we understand we don't want to hurt this thing. Unless you're like some sort of weird sadistic person, you don't want to hurt something. And so these children's reactions were that they didn't want to hurt this thing. So at what point does an object become, because the children at the same time could be handed like a Barbie doll and they could hold it upside down indefinitely, even though it looks just as realistic, in fact probably more realistic than the Furby, right? It actually has human proportions, and even though it's very small, but they understood that it was just a piece of plastic because it didn't
So
move.
BJ, what do you think?
At what point?
Since it's a philosophy question, it obviously needs to go to BJ for all philosophical questions.
I think my brain must be in a weird place today because while Gary was talking, he talks about how they showed the children like the inner workings of the Furby. The first thing that came to mind was, holy crap, they showed the kids the guts of an Irby. And then they're like, here, play with this living thing that we just showed your... Oh, here's the skeleton of it. I don't know. My brain's just in weird places.
But
I'm also trying to remember how the Furby got dispatched in that one dumb movie we made in high school. And we have a Furby in that.
Yes, you did. It breathes fire.
I guess that was more of a Jeff thing because my scene in that movie got cut out because...
Oh, I remember this scene clearly. Jeff, I'm going to ask you, just for trivia reasons, do you remember how you dispatched the Kirby? Because you were integral in this particular sequence.
Yeah, I hardly remember anything that's more than like yesterday. Remember the whole dementia thing? I know nothing.
You don't remember how you dispatched
I know we're supposed to be podcasting.
Furby.
I know that.
You don't remember how you dispatched the evil
I remember,
Furby.
I don't know. No, nobody's going to follow this, of course. They're like, what are you guys talking about? Okay.
But, so to
Jeff, we have established the fact that no one watched that. Very
that no
few
one
people
really
actually
listens to
this podcast.
No.
Okay, so... most people have never heard of Furbies.
For the
we
curious.
seem to talk about them a lot, but yeah, we did once upon a time try to make an amateur video long before the the labyrinth of the internet took over the world, and it had a Furby as a villain because we feel like cute and fluffy things have a dark, sinister motive behind them, so it makes for a perfect villain. And I don't remember, I think it was, yeah, I actually don't remember how it ended.
Was that the Holy Hand Grenade spoof?
No, it was a missile dog.
Missile
that's
dog,
right.
that's right.
Gary, you remember.
You unleashed a missile dog on the Furby.
It was a wiener dog that was adorable, and
it was
so much fun.
You did the entire sequence of the wiener dog running around with the camera on its back. And
it was a high school mutual friend's dog. I said his name. I'm going to edit that out.
Yeah. So lots of fun. But let's go back to your question, which was a very loaded question.
At what point does life start? At what point does machine stop and life start? Because
this is a huge question, and I could talk for 5 hours on it, so I'm not going to do that. I'm not. I promise not to do that. But I will say that I think that what life is or is not is so far beyond the comprehension of what we have that we are totally lost as to what it means and what it doesn't mean. And I think this is actually kind of a poignant thing, not to get too heavy, but there's a lot of people who are looking at how intelligence now amongst machines is so advanced. They're going to go, oh, well, it must be alive because like the Furby, it reacts in a certain way, and we go, oh, it must be alive. And our instincts, just like those children in the study, is to be anthropomorphic towards everything. I mean, machines have been around humans for not that many generations. They're very new, and our biology has been, is very old. So it's kind of a thing. I think that we are totally lost as to what life is or is not. But in the case of this movie, I would say every machine is not alive. But if I were in this movie as one of these characters, and these machines are coming from a place that I don't know anything about where they come from or how they were made or what they are, but they come in, they seem to react in ways of intelligence, and then when you get the magnifying glass and look closely, you see that this is not just wires and circuit boards. There's like tiny particle-like machines. There's like microscopic machines,
Jeff,
or small machines.
Don't look too closely with that microscope, or else they'll smack it out of your hand because they don't like it when you start poking.
Well, when they showed that scene, what comes to mind for me is like when a biologist looks at a living creature, like a human or an animal, and they see red blood cells and white blood cells, and they see a structure. It's almost like a giant city inside of a body where all these things are interacting and happening. And I love that they showed that these creatures have enormous complexity to them, because if you're going to have a living creature that that can replicate and create new creatures through reproduction that can even somewhat repair themselves, it's almost like they're machines, but they have the complexity of the human body at the same time.
So
down when you look at it close. So I think it's awesome. So would I assume that those creatures are living and intelligent? I probably wouldn't know, but what else do you do? You don't know what these creatures are. You have to act in some way. And I would say I can't assume that they're not alive because I don't know what they are. And they're way beyond what I can comprehend.
So
what Jeff basically said for the last 5 minutes is, I don't know.
Okay. So,
but
the great art of being a philosopher is to say, I don't know, in as many words as you can.
I suppose if you want to get even deeper, the true argument would be life, if they're alive versus whether or not they're sentient. Because there's things that are alive but aren't sentient, you could say. So,
like a plant?
Like plants,
plants are alive, yet
yeah.
What do they think about? They don't think, really. They're just there.
Yep.
Oh.
So we get these two newborns, and then the third one, and Mr. Harry Noble takes it off to his room and he works on it, but then through kind of happenstance manages to, after a little while he gets a little frustrated, but happenstance occurs to him being able to revive this new little thing so that it is able to now function as a. This is yet again one of those little situations, because if you go through situations like this where you have difficulties of birth, it makes it very difficult to watch this movie, because you're
It's
watching
difficult,
this happen.
but
And then you remember things and feel feelings, and you're like, oh gosh, I'm gonna have to go through those feelings again. But this child, this then third child of the aliens is fully brought to full capability and is now a fully formed little being again. But it is in the care of Mr. Harry Noble. Everybody thinks that it's passed away, right? And so
which also bears into this whole question you had, because it's not alive. It's born, not alive. He goes and repairs it. Keep in mind, these creatures are incredibly sophisticated, but yet this Earth man that has a knowledge of electronics is somehow able to fix it.
Oh, he doesn't fix it. Did you watch that scene? He doesn't get any.
He attempts to, gets nowhere, right?
He
Okay,
attempts
and you
to,
make a
gets
good
nowhere,
point.
but
Yeah.
then something happens to where he's able. There's some chemicals and an electrical connection get into a sink, and this thing too accidentally, and all of that combines together to basically restart this or start this thing up again, and it's able to do it's got some sort of self repair mechanisms within it that get jump started by that particular set of circumstances. It's kind of one of those lucky happenstances. But the
Which also makes me think that these machines, because they repair things,
Yeah.
they repair things very fast, but they do have limitations to what they can repair and how well they can repair it.
yes,
You get a sense to that they're not infinitely awesome at fixing things. There's limits to them.
that and I do get that as well. But after that, they pay back the occupants of the building, most specifically the Rileys, by working in their restaurant for a day.
I wouldn't use the word payback, though. I think that this is a situation where people are just actively helping each other, and there is no thought as to who owes anything to who else. It's like this building is a community. It's just a community of people, like in the 1950s, where you would just have people on a street. They just help each other.
And it brings
just do it.
And it brings them back together. The situation brings them back together, which is where we start to get into the third act, where Carlos starts to become a part of the movie again, and he really needs these people to get out for him to achieve his goals. Right, for the land developer and him to achieve these goals.
Which his goals is being somebody.
He wants.
You get a sense that when he was a kid, he was a dreamer. He wanted to be somebody, and he grew up in a rough neighborhood, probably from a rough situation, and he wanted to be somebody. And the somebodies he looks up to are the rich, powerful men that are at the top of the world of business. You catch him looking at a Forbes magazine. He's not all that educated.
No.
And they all look down on him. Like all these office people, they look down on him as this simple thug who is nowhere near at their high status.
Yeah,
And yet he emulates them. I think that's such an incredibly good character arc of some kind. That's so interesting to me. He loves the guys. He looks up to the people who think nothing of him.
On the other hand, during the experience where the diner is reopened, you do get a very brief moment where he has a humanizing moment with Faye, right? Because she's going through all of this, and she is, for whatever reason, thinks that he is her son. He's not, but she thinks that he is her son, and he moves beyond. At no point does he move beyond that. He humors her in that because he probably recognizes the situation, and he realizes there's a step way too far, and to do anything other than to be the most gentle and caring person towards her is a step too far, and he's not willing to take that.
And you can compare how his friends treat him. They need him to be strong, or they turn against him.
Yeah,
that's the way his friends are. Because they beat up and intimidate people. That's what they love to do. And so the moment he starts to be weak, they strike against him. And you contrast that lifestyle that he's used to, that he knows, and he sits down with Faye, and she just warmly talks to him. And I think that's where he starts a little bit to shift a little bit. He forms an attachment to her.
Even before that, this isn't the first time, and he's been gentle with his treatment of her in particular. Not anybody else, just her in particular. He's being particularly gentle with his treatment of her. And when she reaches out for him to try to do this, you see this like little humanizing moment, and then later he's like, no, I still need to, he's like girding himself, getting himself ready to really push these people out of the building, because he knows that he needs to do that, or else his opportunity to become part of this, or at least his perceived opportunity to become part of this world, this rich and powerful world, it will close, and he won't get this opportunity again. But yeah, you're right. The office people clearly are just using him as a thug for.
And the sad thing about Carlos is...
Okay,
go ahead.
Just to interject, y'all kind of missed a step in the story here. So at one point, Carlos comes to try to drive people out again, and he encounters the aliens, and there's this comedic scene where he gets zapped, and so that's what kind of turns his team against Carlos, is that he tells them that this weird thing happened. They're like, oh, Carlos is losing it or whatever. So just to give a bit more context about the people Carlos is doing stuff for, kind of turning against him.
Oh yeah, he's definitely showing.
We get a chance. Go ahead.
Like he's afraid. He does not understand what it is that has hurt him. And much like a wounded beast, he's now very much afraid, and the other predators in his little
afraid
pack.
And also a bit obsessed.
Yeah.
Because something that he views himself as the biggest, toughest guy, and so something that can somehow get to him, that's something he's obsessed about. He needs to figure this out and settle what is going on over there. And what's fun about that is all the other characters are getting an interaction with these saucers, and they all kind of get used to it. But now we get to see the point of view of an outsider who is just weirded out by them and is shocked by what's going on. And they do it all with a lot of good comedy, and so it's great.
Well,
it's great. So that's one of the reasons why I like Carlos as the character. It's not just his arc, it's that he has this problem that some weird thing is happening, and he can't figure it out, and his friends turn against him because of it. All these things happen to Carlos, and it's really well written.
Yeah, and it's kind of like it's still kid gloves on during most of Act 2, right up to the end of it, and then Act 3 is when kid gloves come off, and they say, okay, no, now is time for us to really treat this like a more realistic and dangerous situation. And he goes in, he breaks into the building with an axe to he wants to destroy the water and electricity. And once he does that, the break the lines of water and electricity. If he can do that, then the building won't have any water, it won't have any electricity, and the tenants will have to move out. At least that's his plan.
Which Carlos doesn't have great plans. I'll just put that out there. They hired this guy. He doesn't have a great insight as to what really is a good idea. And it goes into his whole character, because he thinks this is the great way for him to get out of his bad situation. In reality, it's probably not. Even if he succeeded, he probably wouldn't, the company wouldn't give him a bigger job or a place in an office building.
No, you actually see, so there's another person that they hire, and that other person is basically him later in life. And this person his plan is arson, right? He has.
I don't know if it's him later in life. I think these characters are very different.
No, it's him later in life if he never had any, if he continued in this particular path, where
maybe
I don't know. If he continued in this particular path of working for this company, instead of working in an office, he'd just be doing this kind of job for this company.
I kind of see Carlos being a very simple person.
But
if this didn't work out, he'd probably just stay as a thug.
But the arsonist was
never change.
But the arsonist was kind of like a person who would do what the company wanted them to do for money, which is not something Carlos wanted to do, but the arsonist understood, because he probably had done that for his whole life. Whatever the company needed, he would do it for X amount of money, and that's kind of where Carlos didn't quite get it, and this person does get it. But this is where Carlos would have gone later in life, where the arsonist has this intricate plan of how to burn down the building, and then but first make sure that nobody's in the building at the time. He doesn't quite do that, because there's still the one lady in there, but everybody else is out of the building. The reason being because Carlos, when he was breaking the electricity and water, he got into he damaged one, I think the daddy robot. He damaged it, and that scared the three little kid robots. They ran away, and then everybody else, all the human tenants of the building, ran off to go check on, try to get the kids back. So this is kind of interesting where it's led to. The arsonist was like, okay, I'm going to burn this building down because there's nobody in it. And then, because everybody's out on the town for whatever reason, I'm just going to do this. And then they'll come back and they'll have to move now, because the burning building, you can't live in it. Sorry, I went on there for a second.
So, not to derail your guys' deep conversation here, can I ask a question that kind of bothered me when I was watching the movie?
Go for it.
What's up with the dog whistle? Did they ever establish anything that would say that the robots would respond to a dog whistle?
Harry Noble's character, when he had the smallest one for a time, he was attempting, because he didn't quite understand its level of intelligence, he was trying to teach it to come to him if he blew a dog whistle. And so he would blow a dog whistle, and then he would gesture. He would pick it up and put it in his pocket, and then he would take it back out and put it on the ground, and then he would blow the dog whistle again, and then motion for it to come over to him. And so when he eventually was trying to find the children, he blew the dog whistle, and the one recognized that sound, and it remembered him. and so it was able
Okay.
to find him that way.
Okay, I must have missed that part because during that whole scene, I'm like, why is he blowing the dog whistle and making it so it's playing this high-pitched sound for like 5 minutes straight, which was really annoying. So
It was
that was my bad.
annoying. They could have done
Yeah.
anything else, but it's very difficult to do that across an entire city.
Okay, that was my question about the movie. You gentlemen can carry on.
Well, dog whistles normally don't make any sound, right?
They
I
don't,
don't know.
not
They don't
sounds
make any
that we
sound.
can perceive. Not sounds that we can
Right.
perceive.
So the fact that his whistle does make a little bit of a high pitched sound is kind of weird. Is
Well,
it not?
that's
I don't know a lot about dog whistles.
that
to be
is
honest,
probably
but-
just to illustrate that he's actually blowing on the whistle instead of just, oh look, he's blowing a dog whistle. Nope, we have to
'cause normally
make
you'd,
the
like,
world's
hear a
most
little bit of
annoying
air,
sound
and that's
for
it.
5 minutes. So yeah,
Okay.
that was
So he blows the dog whistle, little kids come back, and then they manage to get back to the building just in time to see it burning down. And then we see Carlos's kind of humanizing moment where he's rescued Faye from the burning building. It's just shows that he's not a complete villain. He's a villain, but he's not like, because he's the one who saw the arsonist, and instead of stopping him right then and there, he says, oh, well, if this is the thing that we're doing, then this is the thing that we're doing, and he doesn't stop him.
He's a chaotic villain. He's just a guy who's comes from a bad background,
Oh,
and so he's impulsive, is what it is. Carlos is impulsive. The other guy is more like a
hardened criminal, yes.
yeah. He's a very hardened criminal who knows his stuff and is careful about leaving evidence behind. And then Carlos comes, which is a very different kind of criminal. Very different.
Yeah, people would. I don't know if people might have noticed. I mean, modern day forensics might, and even forensics of the time might have figured out eventually if they'd. The key thing is if they'd cared to, right?
Yeah.
If they'd cared
This is a
to, if they
neighborhood
put a
that
lot of effort into it, they
isn't
probably
really
would have figured
patrolled,
out
yeah.
eventually what had happened. But it's a lot easier to notice what Carlos was doing.
Mhm.
So, yeah, we get this. The building's burned down, and then, I mean, the construction crew was, ever since the beginning of the movie, always had kind of a human face on it. So it wasn't kind of like this unstoppable element, right? I don't know if you caught that.
Well, yeah, they have the one construction guy who is just a construction guy. He's not really the construction company or the people, the workers are not really the evil guys. They're just doing a job. And you get that they understand the importance of the building.
But they've been
Yeah, it's funny that they are the ones who fill up the diner. So the very people that would normally destroy it are in there having food, and it's such like a in your face sort of thing to the rich company that's trying to tear it down.
yeah
Because not only this situation isn't getting worse for them, it's getting better for them, and their own workers are enjoying the diner.
but the it does show that, and the developer has a little moment where he talks about that. He's like, I can't believe I'm paying this crew who's supposed to be demolishing things, and they're taking the money that I'm paying them and they're spending it on the diner that they're supposed to be tearing down.
I know. Yeah.
But the crew, right after this building is being destroyed, right? But the fire tore it down, and the kind of mid-level management person is there looking around at things, and he sees them not demolishing what's left of the building, and the construction crew's like, no, there's still a guy sitting there. He's just mourning the loss of his building, and let him sit there. He can't stay there forever. He'll just be there for a little bit, and then he'll go away, right? And then the mid-level manager is like, you just move him out of the way,
Well, and I think with Harry Noble, he's lonely. He's a lonely.
Yeah, all the people.
That's why the little tiny saucer, the littlest of them, he really forms an attachment to that smallest of saucer because he's lonely and he really wants a friend, and it's really hard for him to give that friend up. He has to do it several times.
Yes, and
but that's part of the human side of this, is that even though they're here to help, I mean, it's not so much that they just swarm, that these saucers come in and just fix everything for them. They don't just make all their problems go away. But I think what they actually give them the most is just a sense that not everything is so dismal and awful, and that life is still good.
And it helps them reestablish a community within that building. It's where these...
And I think they find something in themselves to where they're just
I could very
ready to keep on living is what it is. They recover from this terrible abyss where things are hopeless, and now they have hope. And it's not that their problems went away necessarily. I mean, their building is back again.
Yeah, you missed that, Jeff. You forgot that.
Yeah, I was gonna say, apparently my job this podcast is to come in and make snarky comments, because Jeff's like, it's not like the robots make their problems go away until the robots come in and make all their problems go away.
Well, no, like the phase dimentia's still there. I mean, Harry Noble, even though he doesn't quite get a friend, but still, I think that he feels better through the process because he's...
The saucers do rebuild the building at the last... it doesn't show that full sequence, but they do eventually rebuild this building after it gets burned down. And then everybody comes back, all the people, all the tenants who were living in that building. And I could imagine it gets refilled with tenants after this, because it does get preserved as kind of a historical monument, because it was a historical building to start with, but it just was getting torn down because reasons. But they kind of like, I can imagine, because even they leave the story right there, which is good, because then you're just left to fill in the blanks of what happened afterwards in your own head. But my own particular headcanon is
part of that.
No, go ahead.
Okay, so to make a pre-podcast callback, so since Jeff's over here being pedantic, okay, so the robots don't fix all the problems, but they resolve the primary conflict.
They do, and what happens is that the Rileys get what they want, which is just to live out their days in the place that they lived and that they raised their son. And what Marissa and Mason, they hook up, so they get Mason gets somebody who gets his art in a way that probably others, and that's the thing about an artist, he might want to be famous, but really he's searching for some sort of something more within his art, where he just wants to be passionate. And the thing about artists, they're like searching for something, but they don't know what it is. But whatever it is, when they get closer to it, at that point they'll know what it is.
And Marissa,
and I think when he meets Marissa that's
wants,
where he starts to understand
someone
what
in her life that has that passion, I'm guessing.
Yeah, that too. She likes how he's passionate about things, and they get along they're very good friends. They click well. They get along well with each other. And even though she has this other guy who is distant, really, he comes and goes. He's not really invested in her like she would want. And she's in denial about that. So in the end, what I'm trying to say is, they fix the building, but really the real problem that is being solved here is that these people find what they're looking for on their own, and they do it through helping the machines and through interacting with each other. They find those really key things themselves. And the building being restored is just it's just there as it's a physical place for them to live in, but they find what they want on their own. Does that make any sense?
Go ahead. One question I do have that maybe you guys could answer, because I don't get where did this? Because right at the end of kind of mid Act 3, suddenly a dog shows up. What the heck happened there? Maybe I missed it. It's like for instance.
Oh, there's a dog that so he has a dog. So
Yeah, he
so I
Did
guess
he
he
have a
kind of
dog
does get a friend.
earlier in the movie?
he
Or
didn't
did the
have a
dog
dog earlier in the movie. Mid Act
the
3,
dog
it just spontaneously
Yeah.
appears.
It's just
He
it's a
just
stray dog.
He just kidnapped someone's dog by blowing the dog whistle.
But
Yay, he has a dog now.
Maybe
Meanwhile, in the
He
background,
blew the
missing
whistle around the
dog
city
signs
and comes back with
everywhere.
a dog.
maybe the dog becomes his friend. Maybe Harry Noble, that is. Maybe that becomes his friend as a replacement for the littlest of the three robots. Maybe.
Yeah.
So we
I don't
so
know,
we
but
kind of
the
get the
answer-
idea that he would have a dog friend as opposed, because he really needed a dog friend a lot more than he needed a little robot friend.
But yeah, to answer your question, no. The dog just kind of appears when he blows a dog whistle. Then there's a dog.
Yeah. I didn't get that. I was like, what the heck? It just
Why is there,
manifests out of
why is
nowhere.
there a dog?
Dog
It's a
manifests
dog.
out of nothing.
You just they're it's
The
a
cuff's
big
dog.
city. They just wander around. The dog just was like, oh, there's a person. I guess I'll just be friends with them.
Oh, okay. I guess that's how dogs work.
Just kidnap
Why
someone's
not?
dog.
If it's a stray dog, it might just decide it likes somebody.
Pretty well behaved for a stray dog.
Yeah, very well behaved.
All it has to do is like feed the dog once, and the dog will be like, oh yeah, I'll be your friend now.
Okay.
And that
So
they don't go into it, but yeah, that could be actually part of him gaining some amount of companionship. Plus, he was wanting the building to be restored, and now it's restored as well.
that
Definitely
is
really
a
hard
thing.
to justify this dog.
It kind of shows. I was talking earlier about this mosaic mural that is at the entrance of the building that was kind of damaged, and he was trying to put it together. That's one of the shots that they show, is that not just is the building restored, but that mosaic is exactly the way it was when the building was originally built. So it kind of like you can see him and the other tenants. They're walking back into this home that they loved previously, but now it's completely restored, and they're able to be happy in this place.
Yeah. I just want to say one more thing. Yet, obviously, there's always more. But even though Carlos is my favorite character, really, I think the character that holds this whole movie together is Faye Riley. It's the older lady with dementia. I think because these strange things from another world are coming down, and everything is bizarre. And instead of freaking out and getting crazy or doing anything else, you have this lady who has dementia, which makes her very childlike, who just simply embraces it and goes along with it. And she's funny. Faye is funny. All of her lines, everything she does, it's humorous, and it's...
I didn't
yeah,
quite get that
I
same
think she
experience
holds
from
this
it,
movie
Jeff.
together.
But if you want to,
Okay.
if you want to have that, you go fine right ahead. Go ahead.
I think all of her comments and everything, it's just, yeah. She goes, oh, why don't they talk about President Eisenhower anymore? As they're sitting around and people
She's
just kind of
suffering
like,
from
all right.
dementia, and it's terribly crippling in its own way.
I know, but it could be funny. It is funny.
And her
It
poor
is funny.
husband
It was
is
meant to be funny in the 80s, and I think we still need to laugh and recognize when something's funny. And yeah, okay, dementia is a thing, and they show in the movie how it's traumatic for them too. They don't wipe over that. It's a part of the movie. But you can kind of like, when people are hard to live with, it's okay to laugh when they make you laugh, because I think that's just part of the experience.
well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's just say it depends on personal experience.
Yeah, it really does. How much you're with a person who's,
Okay.
anyways,
Yeah.
and your personal experience with those people as well. But yeah, so the kind of one of those happy endings that movies get every so often. and where everything kind of gets tied up with a bow. It's not everything, but it's most of the story is resolved. There's still more that they could talk about, but they decide to end it right there, and that's okay, because movies can tell a story and then resolve most of it and then be done. I'm more than willing to accept that.
So, BJ, tell me, after all this conversation, you still have the same outlook about this movie?
Yep. You see, I'm just happy to let you guys go at it, because the less I talk, the less I have to edit myself. So this is awesome. Sit down, listen to you guys go all day, except not all day, because I don't want to edit that much.
And just to answer your question, Jeff, I feel the same way, because it's a good movie, but depending on your life experience, because this does not shy away from very deep life experiences that might make you end up feeling feelings that you're not quite ready to feel. And I'm hoping next time we get to watch some other kind of movie that doesn't, like, okay, can I just watch, like...
All right, I'm going to draw a really weird parallel here. But this movie does, in fact, have some reminders for me of Mary Poppins.
Mary Poppins.
I almost said Harry Poppins.
Poppins?
Mary Poppins. Mary Poppins. You're in a situation where things are bleak, and who comes in? Somebody with enormous abilities who looks at things very positively and who gives the children opportunities to use their imagination and to be brought into to think about interesting and different things. And with these machines, I almost feel like they're coming in to clean up the mess. And there's this really good movie that Disney made, which it was like a movie, what is it? Saving Mr.
Mary
Banks.
Poppins? No.
No, there's another movie they made a couple years ago that I thought was brilliant that was called Saving Mr. Banks. And it goes into some of the history behind the making of Mary Poppins and the author of the book and her own experience, where she had an aunt who came to help her family when her father was sick and also an alcoholic. And she would come in and would clean and fix things. She had a very broken, falling apart house with the family was struggling with everything, and she just came in and kind of like Mary Poppins everything. And I almost think that this is a somewhat similar situation where you have people that are struggling. And here comes these more Steven Spielberg type aliens who come in and just kind of start fixing things. And they don't solve problems for people. What they do is they just clean up the mess and give them another chance. They give them another chance to just keep going. And that's all they needed to put everything together and to really solve and figure out. And I think it was just the fact that when things were like bleak, somehow some hope came in, some rescue came in there. And it's that little rescue, I think, inspired everybody, all of the characters. They're inspired now by the fact that there's generosity. And that's the thing with Carlos. Carlos comes from this beat-up background. And yet, when he comes into their social group and he talks with Faye and even the old man who, the father, he throws him out of a building, but later on, he lets it go. He forgives him for that because he's really a good guy. And so when Carlos is introduced to these different people who aren't like his other friends, he realizes that a little generosity can actually change people. It's possible. It's possible. And I think that's part of the real heart of this movie. And it's that heart. It's that emotion you guys are feeling. They're like, oh no, what's attacking me? Yeah, it's those warm feelings.
Again, based on personal experience.
I think that's where it comes from.
Based on personal experience.
Personal experience changes things, Jeff. You experience
Well, yeah, of course
things
it does, and
differently
that's what
when
this
you
movie is.
when you have
Yeah.
friends and family who are going through these situations, and then you see
Well,
the movie going through it, and you're like, oh gosh, now I'm remembering all these things, and I don't want to.
so there's a
So
pattern here. The first part of the movie makes you heart sick, and then later on, they change that heart sickness into like a warm fuzziness, and that's the emotional transition of the movie. So yes,
okay, the emotional transition of this podcast is that I don't think Jeff gets it.
okay,
Very apt,
fine.
BJ. Very apt.
Let's just argue for hours and hours and hours till the end of time
Let's
and
not.
have an 8-hour podcast.
Let's not.
Let's not. Okay.
All right.
We've been at
You
this
guys
for an hour and a
both
half.
obviously.
I think it's okay. Gary thinks it's okay, but he has some complex emotions due to events in the movie. Jeff loves it.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. Awesome.
Yep.
I'm just going to end that conversation there because, yes.
Yeah, and let's just carry things on for next time. But yeah, there's some deep philosophical questions on top of all of the emotions that you're going to feel. It's going to raise some deep philosophical questions that I know that we didn't answer, but we still had a conversation about in this.
We have...
Yeah.
And there's some
we
other
did
stuff
try.
too.
Yeah.
But
We've been at this for an hour and a half, which is about an hour longer than I thought this conversation was going to last. So...
yeah, it wasn't the longest movie, so that's at least we had that to be thankful for.
Okay. So...
I wish the robots did laundry too. You don't see them washing any clothes because that's a job that I definitely would.
Jeff, they're
prefer
fixers and
a saucer to
assemblers.
come
They're
and
not
do.
launderers.
Laundrists.
Laundresses?
Laundrists? I don't. They probably like fold the socks wrong or something, or like one pant leg in and out. Like they messed up the hamburger, so they probably would mess up the laundry somehow
Well,
too.
I mean, they don't wear clothes, so why would they need to do laundry?
Yeah.
That is profound, BJ.
That's
Deeply profound.
That's as deep as I'm going to get in this podcast. Okay, so at the risk of cracking open this door I slam shut. Any final thoughts?
No final thoughts. Nope. I'm done.
Yeah?
Silence.
Okay, awesome. Silence is good. Anyway, so this movie gets 1 recommendation into a half recommendation. So 2 out of 3. We need to
that
work
equals
on,
2 recommendations.
We need to work on some sort of rating system. I don't know. So anyway, do we want to say what movie we're going to watch next time? Do you know what movie we're going to watch next time?
I don't think we know what movie we're going to watch next time.
What movie
it's
are
my
we?
choice.
No, we'll talk about it afterwards. I think that would be
Okay.
the best to do.
It's a mystery. Okay,
a
awesome.
mystery.
The movie I have in mind is not a mystery. Anywho, so thank you for listening to this episode of Wandering Tension podcast. I'm going to come back, edit the audio, and listen to all the conversation I kind of zoned out through, because I was in the weird headspace today, so that's going to be fun. Gary, thank you once more for joining us. I don't know how many more times you have to show up for us to just call you a part of the cast now.
I've got my plans, but we can go from there.
Plans.
Plans within
One
plans.
of us.
Well,
you will be assimilated.
2 is a
Gary.
good podcast. 3 is perfectly fine. Anything more than that just kind of gets things crowded. So if I need to duck out to make room for another guest on the podcast, I'm perfectly willing to do that.
Well, I think you're, of all the people who could potentially be other guests, I think you're in this best place to talk to that one about whether or not she wants to show up, but I'll leave that to you.
Oh, no, she definitely wants to at some point.
Okay, so anyway, thank you for listening to Wandering Tangent Podcast once more. I'm BJ. With me was Jeff. Special recurring guest star Gary, aka mutual friend, was also with us, and we'll see you next time.